Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. I let my wife's parents move into our home after their foreclosure. I gave up my office, my privacy, my quiet. One night, I came home to find my tools on the curb and my desk in the garage. We needed the space, my wife said. Her mother added, "You never really belonged here anyway." I slept in my car that night. In the morning, I opened the letter I'd hidden in my glove box for months, and it changed everything. I never thought my life would turn into such a mess. It all started when Emily's parents lost their house in a foreclosure. Her dad called her crying, saying they had nowhere to go. Emily begged me. "Please," she said, "they'll only be here for a little while." I didn't love the idea, but what was I supposed to do? Tell her no and make her resent me forever? So I said yes. I gave up my office, moved my desk into the garage, and let them have the guest room. For the first week, I tried to convince myself I was doing the right thing. But things started going downhill fast. Her parents didn't just move in, they took over. Her mom criticized everything. The way I decorated the living room, the food I bought, the brands I used. Her dad wasn't any better. He took my tools out of the garage without asking. He rearranged the shed like it was his. They treated me like a tenant in my own home. And Emily? She changed too. It was like she turned into her parents' puppet. I'd tell her, "Hey, I need the garage back for work." And she'd say, "They need the space more." I'd ask her why her dad was going through my mail, and she'd say, "He's just helping out." Then came the night that pushed me over the edge. It was a Friday. I had just finished a brutal week of deadlines. I was exhausted and just wanted a cold beer and some peace. But when I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. My workbench was on the curb, stacked up like trash. My toolbox was right there too, next to the recycling bins. My heart sank. I walked inside and there was my desk, crammed into the garage, covered in dust and oil stains. I couldn't believe it. I asked Emily, "What the hell is going on?" She barely looked up from her phone. "We needed the space," she said. Her voice was flat, like she was bored with the whole thing. Her mom, sitting on the couch, chimed in without missing a beat. "You never really belonged here anyway." It was like I'd been slapped. My chest tightened. I felt humiliated, angry, lost. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just grabbed my keys and left. I parked my car a few blocks away and sat there for hours, just staring at the steering wheel. I didn't cry, but my hands were shaking. I felt like a stranger in my own life. That night, I slept in my car. I curled up in the back seat with a blanket and tried to tell myself it wasn't real. The next morning, I woke up sore and cold. The sun was coming up, and I felt empty. I sat there, staring out the windshield, trying to figure out how my life had gone so far off track. Then I remembered the letter in my glove box, months earlier. A client of mine, Alex, a guy I had done freelance work for, had sent me a letter. It was an offer for a full-time job in Seattle. A good job, health benefits, steady pay, a creative team. Back then, I didn't even open it fully. I just shoved it in the glove box thinking, "No, I can't move. Emily wouldn't want that. We have our life here." But now, everything had changed. I tore open the envelope. My hands were shaking. The offer was still there. The job was still available. Alex had even handwritten a note at the bottom. "Alex, if you change your mind, just give me a call. We'd love to have you out here." That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going to stay in that house another second longer. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I was going to Seattle. That morning, sitting in my car, I made the decision. I was done. Done being a doormat. Done letting Emily and her parents take over my life. I wasn't going to beg for respect in my own home anymore. I drove back to the house just long enough to grab my laptop, a few clothes, and my personal stuff. The house was quiet. Emily was in the kitchen scrolling on her phone. Her mom gave me a smug look but didn't say a word. Her dad was in my garage tinkering with my tools like they were his. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my things and left. That same day, I called Alex in Seattle. He answered on the second ring, cheerful, like we were old friends. "Hey, you still looking for a designer?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He sounded surprised but excited. "Yeah, absolutely. Are you thinking of making the move?" I told him, yes. I told him I was ready. "Good," he said. "We'll get the paperwork started. Can you be here next week?" I said I could. I didn't know how, but I was going to make it work. I had a little bit of savings, just enough for gas and a couple nights in a cheap motel. I figured I'd find a place to crash when I got there. At that point, it didn't matter. I just needed out. The next day, I packed what little I had into my car, some clothes, my laptop, a box of old photos, and a few tools I could salvage before they ended up on the curb. Before I left, I wrote Emily a note. I kept it short. It just said, "I'm done. I hope you and your parents are happy. Don't contact me." I didn't sign it. I hit the road and drove straight through the night. Every mile that put distance between me and that house felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I thought I'd feel relief, but mostly I felt rage. Rage at Emily for letting this happen. Rage at her parents for treating me like garbage. Rage at myself for putting up with it for so long. When I finally pulled into Seattle the next day, I felt like I could breathe again. But just as I started to settle in, just as I was thinking maybe things were finally turning around, I got an email from my bank. There was a second mortgage taken out on the house. My name was on the paperwork. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. I knew for a fact I never signed anything like that. My hands were shaking. I called the bank right away. They told me the papers had been filed weeks ago, signed by Emily and me, except I never signed them. I called Emily, furious. She actually answered like nothing was wrong. "Oh, that? Don't worry, my dad handled all the paperwork. He said, you'd be fine with it." I almost dropped the phone. He said, "I'd be fine with it." I couldn't even get the words out. She sighed like I was being unreasonable. It was just to help them get back on their feet. They needed the money. "You're so dramatic." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They'd forged my signature. They'd used my name to get a second mortgage without telling me, and now I was on the hook for it. I told her I was getting a lawyer. Her voice snapped. "Don't you dare! If you screw this up, you'll ruin us all. You're being selfish. You always have been." That was it. The last string snapped. I hung up and started looking for a lawyer. The same day. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent the next few days trying to process everything. I'd escaped that house, but it felt like Emily and her parents had their claws in me from across the country. The second mortgage wasn't just a debt. It was a trap, a way to keep me tied to them no matter how far I ran. I found a lawyer in Seattle, a sharp, no-nonsense guy named David with a reputation for handling messy cases. I showed him the paperwork, the forged signature, the emails from the bank. David looked it all over and didn't sugarcoat it. "This is fraud," he said, flipping through the documents. "Plain and simple. But it won't be easy. If the bank thinks you were part of it, they'll come after you, not your wife's family." I felt sick. David said we needed evidence, proof that I never signed those papers. He told me to check if there were any surveillance, cameras at the bank, any emails or texts that showed Emily and her dad handling it without me. I started digging, and what I found made my blood run cold. Her dad had emailed the loan officer pretending to be me. He'd used an email address I didn't even know existed, just a few letters off from mine. The signature on the paperwork wasn't even close to mine, and the craziest part? The money from the second mortgage, it was gone, transferred into a separate account under her parents' names. When I confronted Emily about it, she acted like I was the crazy one. She actually laughed. Come on, you think I'm going to let my parents end up on the street? You wouldn't really sue your own wife, would you? That's when it hit me. She thought I was too soft to fight back. She thought I'd roll over just like I always did. I told David I wanted to go after them. All of them. Emily, her parents, the loan officer who didn't check the signatures. Didn't care how long it took or how much it cost. I was going to burn it all down if I had to, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I got a call from my old neighbor back home. Hey man, just a heads up. There's a for sale. Sign in your yard. Sign in your yard. I almost dropped my phone. Emily was trying to sell my house without telling me, without my permission. I called the realtor listed on the sign. Sure enough, Emily had told them I'd moved out for good and was out of the picture. She said she had full control over the sale. The realtor didn't even know I existed. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. Emily and her parents weren't just trying to scam me. They were trying to erase me like I was never part of the life we built together. That's when I knew I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to destroy them. I made a promise to myself that night, sitting in my car, staring at the for sale sign in my yard, over 1,000 miles away. I wasn't going to let them win. They had taken my home, my trust, and almost my future. Was going to take everything back and make sure they paid for every bit of it. I met with my lawyer, David, and we laid out a plan. We would hit them with everything. Fraud charges for the forged mortgage, civil suits for the stolen funds, and a full stop on the house sale. I filed an emergency injunction to block the sale, and it worked. Emily couldn't sell the house without my signature, and that stopped her cold. But I wasn't done. David found the smoking gun, emails between Emily's father and the bank's loan officer with attached scans of the fake signatures. I also dug up texts between Emily and her mom, bragging about how I was too weak to fight back and how they'd use the house money to finally fix up their lives. They laughed at me behind my back, literally. The text made it clear this wasn't some innocent mistake. They planned it. Every move was calculated. I turned all of it over to the authorities. 2 months later, the FBI got involved. Fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. It all hit them like a hammer. The bank froze the accounts. Emily's parents were arrested at home, in my living room in front of the neighbors. Emily got served papers at her job. Her smug look from before, gone. She called me in a panic, crying, begging me to help her, saying she didn't know what her parents were doing, that she never meant for it to go this far, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her straight up, "You let them use me, you help them, don't ever call me again." She screamed at me, cursing me out, saying I was ruining her life. That's when I said the last thing I'll ever say to her. "You ruined it yourself." She hung up on me and I blocked her number. The court case dragged on for months, but in the end, I won. The judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. The fraudulent loan was wiped clean after the evidence showed I never signed it. The loan officer got fired and charged. Emily's dad went to prison for fraud and identity theft. Her mom took a plea deal and avoided jail, but her reputation was trashed. And Emily, she filed for bankruptcy. Her credit ruined. No house, no job, nothing. As for me, I sold the house. I didn't want it anymore. Too many bad memories. I took the money, moved to a better part of Seattle, and started fresh. My design career took off. Alex kept his promise. I made new friends, met someone who treated me right, and finally felt like I was in control of my own life again. But here's the thing. I wasn't perfect in all of this. I'd ignored the warning signs for too long. I'd let myself be a doormat, always trying to keep the peace, always trying to avoid conflict. That was my mistake. I let them take advantage of me because I didn't stand up for myself when it mattered. But I learned, and I changed. Looking back now, I'm glad it happened. It hurt like hell, but it taught me a lesson I'll never forget. If you don't fight for your own life, someone else will take it from you. And as for Emily and her parents, I never heard from them again. I hope they remember me every time they see a foreclosure sign, because I'll sure as hell never forget them. It took months for everything to play out, but when it did, it was like watching their whole world collapse in slow motion. And I'll admit it, I watched every second. Emily's dad, Jack, that smug bastard who thought he could sign my name and steal my house. He got hit the hardest. The FBI didn't mess around. The fraud charges stuck, plus wire fraud, conspiracy, and a few other counts they tacked on for good measure. They found out he'd done this kind of thing before. Small scams here and there, but nothing as bold as forging a mortgage. Turns out he'd been playing dirty for years. His sentencing, 8 years in federal prison. The look on his face in court when the judge read that out, I'll never forget it. He just sat there, blinking like he couldn't believe it, like the world was unfair to him. Emily's mom, she took a plea deal to avoid jail, but the damage was done. They froze all their accounts. She had to sell off what little they had, her car, the jewelry she used to show off at family gatherings, even the furniture in the living room. She ended up moving into a tiny apartment in a bad part of town, and from what I heard later, she started working at a gas station part-time just to get by. For a woman who used to turn her nose up at my job, that was a hell of a fall. Emily, God, Emily. She was the worst of them all because she knew what they were doing and didn't stop it. She thought she'd just slide out of this mess, but no. Her name was on the fraud too, so she got hit with charges. Not prison. She cut a deal, but probation, community service, and a fat stack of fines that she couldn't pay. Her credit was ruined. Her bank accounts frozen, her car repossessed. She ended up losing her job, and I heard she was working at a diner, waiting tables for minimum wage. And yeah, she tried calling me a few more times, tried leaving messages, apologies, begging for help, promising she'd change. I didn't answer a single one. But here's the real kicker. The house. Yeah, I sold it, but I didn't just sell it to anyone. I found a young couple, freshly married, just starting out, and I gave them a deal way under Davide value. They were good people, and I wanted someone to have a real shot at a fresh start. You know what else I did? I made sure that Emily and her parents saw the new owners moving in that first weekend. I drove by the house just to see it one last time. Emily and her mom were standing on the sidewalk, watching the moving trucks, their faces pale, hollow, like the life had been sucked out of them. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I just smiled to myself because they were watching their dream vanish, just like they tried to take mine. And me? I thrived. The job in Seattle turned into the best decision of my life. I started making real money, more than I ever did before. My new boss respected me. I got my own place. Small, but mine. And I finally felt free. I even met someone, a woman who actually listens when I talk, who respects me, who doesn't treat me like I'm just the guy paying the bills. We're taking it slow, but it's good. The best part? I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned that you don't just roll over and let people take from you. You fight, and when you fight smart, you win. Emily, her parents, they learned that lesson too. Every time they check their empty bank accounts, every time they struggle to pay rent, every time they think about what they lost, I hope they remember me. Because I'll tell you this, I'll never forget them. Not for what they did, not for what I took back, and definitely not for what I left them with. That's my story. That's my story.